All right, guys, what is going on? Lux here for the MD Journey, helping you succeed on your medical journey with less stress. So, sorry, first of all, for any quality issues with the camera. This is on my webcam. Normally, I would do it on my phone, but not getting the best sound. So, I'm using my external microphone. So, hopefully, it sounds decent. It may not look the best, but I have amazing kind of quality content that I really want to get out to you guys. So, I went over audio over video. So, hopefully, that's okay. So today is day 6 of my 30-day YouTube challenge, which is I'm trying to get out a video for you guys 30 straight days. And today's day 6. I was trying to think of a topic, and the first thing that came to mind, tomorrow I'm taking my Step 2 CS exam, which is my last big thing for medical school. And I was wondering maybe what kind of things my readers and subscribers will want to know. And one of the questions that the comments showed quite often was, how do you prepare for exams in medical school? How do you do it in college as a pre-med? So today we're going to go over how to prepare for tests. And I'm going to give you 6 practical tips. These are like really golden nuggets that I give throughout a lot of my free things, a lot of my consulting, as well as some of my courses. And so I'm going to give those to you guys. And hopefully you guys will be able to take even just one away and help you guys out. So before we start, I want to, throughout the video, we're going to talk about some free giveaways, which I love to do for my readers, my subscribers on YouTube. And so the first thing, about a month ago, I started a Picmonic giveaway. So I put out a video kind of showing how I use Picmonic, the techniques I used, and my friends at Picmonic were great, giving a 6-month giveaway to one of my viewers that subscribed and did a specific comment. So quick shout out to Catherine. I did get your email, so congratulations on winning a 6-month free access to Picmonic, and I will get in touch with you soon. But always, like I tell my subscribers, go ahead and comment any questions, just say hi, and you'll be entered for random things like that. So congratulations to Catherine. And I'll do one more giveaway at the very end. Jason, how's it going, man? It's good to see you in the chat. So let's just get into it, which is starting with some tips. A lot of them are going to be practical. Some of them are going to be kind of how I break and approach my studying. So the first thing that I like to do when I'm preparing for exam is I like to work backwards. You know when the test is going to happen. So work backwards and kind of set a start date to your review versus just saying, oh crap, I have a test in a week or, a couple of days, I should start studying. When you know when your tests are, this is even college, you know what the dates are. So even before you know what the subject is, if you know the test is on the 30th, saying, go ahead and schedule backwards and tell yourself what day you're going to begin reviewing. I personally really like a week to a week and a half, really a week and a half where it's like 10 days is kind of my golden area. So also give me some insight on how you can hear me quality wise. Hopefully the audio is okay. So Jason, if you're still there, give me a thumbs up if you can hear this, just to make sure everybody that's watching the replay can actually get a good one. But yeah, so go. Perfect. So I'm glad the quality is awesome. Thanks for the comment, buddy. So yeah, go ahead and schedule your day that you want to start reviewing. So like I said, I love 10 days because it's a good mix. So if the test is on the 30th, I'm going to say, on the 20th is when I'm going to begin my review. And then you can break up how you would like to review things, your lectures. So if you have 30 lectures, then you can say, okay, I have 10 days to go over 30 lectures. Now you may think to yourself, well, that means that I have to do only 3 lectures a day, but no, instead what I prefer that you do and what I recommend is focus on repetition. You don't want to just hit the 30 lectures one time before your test. You ideally want to see them maybe 2 to 3 times. So if you know anything about kind of my study techniques, I try to kind of batch as much as I can of the content early on, so that way I can come back to my weak points more often towards the end. So in the description down below, you'll get a link to one of my free video courses where I take you step by step, exactly like how I study from the day before a lecture to the day before a test. And so what I like to do personally is that if I have 10 days and I have 30 lectures, I'll do maybe 5 to 6 lectures the first couple of days. And so the last maybe 5 days, I can focus pretty heavily on just the lectures that I was pretty terrible at understanding. That way, when test comes around, I'm pretty confident that even my weak points are not as weak anymore. So don't spend as much time on your strengths. because that's where you get some fake confidence, but then you get those anxiety-provoking moments that we all do when a test gets around. So front load all your material during your review and then focus your latter half on your weak points. So then everything is kind of crossed off. So that's kind of tip number one. Schedule your day that you're going to begin reviewing, front load all the material, get through it as fast as you can, and then focus on your weak points towards the end. So number two, and this is something that people typically struggle with, especially in medical school, is going from big to small. One thing that I realized through a lot of my students, a lot of the students that I mentor, is that you try to learn everything at one time. I recently made a video on it, and people kind of really enjoy this idea that you don't want to understand everything in medical school. The first time you see it, even the 10th time you see it. Like, I'm on a 4th year medical student. There's still things that I've seen maybe 100 times that I still just can't collect. And I don't feel bad about it. There's, for every 10 pieces of information I don't retain, there's 100 pieces of information I do. And we'll get back to that point later in the video. But instead of trying to look at a lecture and saying, this is 30 pages, that means there's 100 facts and I have to understand 100 facts. Instead, say this is 30 pages with 5 big ideas that I need to understand regardless of what else I grasp from the lecture. First, grasp those 5 ideas. Go through the lecture, understand those 5 ideas. I always like to go to hypertension. I'm kind of a cardio nerd, so you want to understand the big ideas of like hypertension. Maybe if you're learning about a patient with heart failure, you want to say who does heart failure happen in? Why does it happen? How do you treat it? And then what are the consequences if you have a complication from your heart failure? Those are some big ideas that you should understand. Then you get in the nitty-gritty of some details. So, things like what are the receptors on a very pathophysiological mechanistic manner of like what's going on, what medications work and where do they happen on receptors. Those kind of things are very detailed, but students will try to learn the big ideas and the details at the same time. And then they realize not only do they not understand the big ideas, but now they feel overwhelmed. But you can understand the big ideas first, feel confident that you have a relatively decent grasp on heart failure, and then fill in the details over time. And that's kind of how we naturally learn, right? The first time you learn anything in your life, you're not an expert. You don't even master the details much. No, you don't even master the big ideas, much less the details. But as you continue to see that piece of information over and over again, those little pieces of details stick around much longer. So the same way is approaching learning in medical school. Every time you see a lecture saying, what do I need to learn the most? Focus on that and being okay with saying the details aren't always as important. And over time, you'll grasp it. If not for that lecture or for that test, you'll grasp them when you're on your rotations and so on. So be okay with not understanding everything and give yourself some slack. So tip number 2. So that was 2. Let's do the 3. And on 3, I'm going to kind of talk about how you should approach a multiple choice question. Because this tends to be the majority of how tests are written in medical school, because that's how a lot of your board exams will be written. A typical approach for a med student, this is what I did when I first came in, is first, if you aren't in med school, first understand that medical school questions are very long because they're given to you in vignettes. They're given to you in a presentation of what a patient may come in with. So it'll start by saying like 32-year-old female comes in with chest pain of 3 days, and then it'll tell you a few sentences about her history, and then it'll tell you maybe a few labs that were ordered and the results, and then it'll ask you a question. A typical approach for a student is to read from start to finish, get overwhelmed by all the detail, and still have no idea what the patient has. So instead, this is my approach. I do question, answer, and then info. So by that, I mean, read the question before you read anything. So the question may just be, how do you, what's the diagnosis? So now you understand, okay, fine. I have to figure out what this patient's diagnosis is. Now read the answer choices because you want to understand what diagnoses you're working with. If they're all, again, going back to my cardio nerd, if they're all cardiac related and maybe 2 of them are like something totally bizarre, there's a good chance that your patient probably has a cardiac issue. So, but at least now you know what to consider. They may have heart failure, you may have a pulmonary embolism, you may have an aortic dissection, you may have something like a cancer. Those may be different answer choices. So now you know that those are options. Go back into your vignette and now start reading, because now you'll be able to notice clues and apply them to one of the answer choices versus reading everything at once, wasting time, and then not really sure where the question is leading you. Doing this way, not only do you quickly pick up the answer, but you feel a lot more confident. And the other thing is you're not as prone to falling for the traps. So your professors and the med school boards will put traps all across. They'll give you one piece of detail and like a huge paragraph. And if a student reads it, they're going to pick up on it and saying, okay, like they mentioned that this girl traveled on a plane for 13 hours. She definitely has a PE. And they're not going to read anything else. And so they're going to put PE, they're going to fall for the trap, and they're going to, get the question wrong. But if instead you read, the question, the answer choices, and now you're looking for points, you may realize that you have more pieces of evidence pointing to an answer choice aside from a pulmonary embolism. So you tend to not fall for the traps. So understand how to approach multiple choice questions. You do a much better job of answering questions with confidence and walking out of a test with confidence. This is how, when I took my step 2 CK, which is generically even your step 1, most people will come out of that test feeling like crap. And no one really comes out feeling like, like they did amazing. So I'm not going to say I did. But walking out of those tests, I felt like I did the best I could, and I answered the questions that I knew well. And the questions I didn't, like, you just kind of shrug your shoulders and hope that everyone else struggled on them as well as much as you did. So hopefully this approach helps you guys on how to approach a multiple choice question. If it did, give me a thumbs up. Let's move on to number 4 of 6. So number 4 is using specific techniques, memory techniques, and assessment techniques to understand visually how much you struggle with a piece of information. So a lot of you guys that are familiar with my teachings know about my brain dumps. Probably could have picked a better name, but I like brain dump, which is you grab a piece of paper, a blank piece of paper, when you're ready to review a lecture, typically around the time that you're reviewing for your test. And you say, okay, like maybe you take your notes on an outline form, or maybe you do them through flashcards. It doesn't matter. You kind of understand all the info that the test is relatively going to have for that specific lecture. So going back to our heart failure lecture, you kind of know what the points were, and whether or not you actually grasp them is what this technique allows you to see pretty clearly. So grab a piece of paper and try to quickly regurgitate that lecture in shorthand on a piece of paper. So the first big idea, for example, may be epidemiology. You may be able to tell you like who's at risk for having heart failure. And that's the big idea. You may know like 1 or 2 populations that may be at risk for getting heart failure, but there's like at least 5. And you can't remember 3 to 5. So every time you find a gap in your knowledge, you put a little star, or you highlight it, do something on your piece of paper, and you move on to the next topic. You keep doing that through your whole lecture, and then you're going to have a sheet of paper that's going to be a shorthand version of your lecture, and you're going to kind of be able to easily identify all the stars or highlights, whatever you did, and identify those as gaps in your knowledge. So then you're going to go back to your outline, you're going to go back to your flashcards, your PowerPoint, whatever you use as your main resource, and you're going to fill in those gaps. You're going to understand, okay, now what were those other 3 risk factors that I couldn't remember, but I knew they were there? Now do it again. Grab another piece of paper. Do this really quickly, because it's really how much can you retain or be able to like put out from the top of your head. Things that you kind of have to dig deep. That means you may not understand them as well. So grab another piece of paper and try to do it again. You will tend to find is that each time you do this iteration, there's going to be less and less stars and highlights. There's less and less gaps in your knowledge. You do a much easier job of going from point A to point C than you have in the past. So try to apply the brain dump throughout your different courses in college or medical school. It's really effective because it basically gives you a slap in the face of when you try to convince yourself like, oh, I know that. And then you look at your piece of paper and you realize, oh, crap, like I really didn't. So the brain dump is really effective. The other memory technique that I love using is called the memory palace. I kind of hinted in this in the Picmonic video, so check that out. But I give a bigger, more detailed explanation in both my blog as well as my new pre-med course. So I'll link in the description below because I actually make that video free for anyone that checks out the course. And then maybe next week, I think I may just like release that video for free because I think it's pretty effective. But I walk you through how I use the memory palace. And I'm not going to get too much into the technique. You can look this up or watch the video. But the memory palace essentially assigns an area in your daily life. So for example, I use my living room in the video, but you may take, like, for example, your path to school, your path to work, something you take on a very routine basis, or an area you're very familiar with. You know where your couch is, you know where your TV is, you know where your door is. So you can easily picture that in your head. Then you assign very silly images to something you're learning. So in the video, I use medications, and I give each medication I'm trying to memorize a very silly image that represents that drug. And then I start placing them at different parts of my memory palace. Because you're familiar with, for example, in me, the living room, you start putting one medication here, one medication, another part of your memory palace, and you quickly just close your eyes and you start to picture what all the medications were. And you find that because your images were pretty creative and they were funny, you're going to be able to do a much better job of memorizing something. So when the test comes around, all you have to do is close your eyes and think about your memory palace. So I found that technique works really well. But again, I will link that in the description. And then next week, I think I'll just go ahead and release that video for you guys so you can see me kind of walking you through a legit example of how I would use it. So that's technique 4, is use memory techniques like the brain dump and the memory palace to really kind of highlight your gaps in your knowledge, wherever they may be. And I think you guys will really enjoy that. Kind of wrapping up, number 5 is a mindset thing, and then number 6 is another tip. But number 5 is you have to get away from this idea of being deficient in knowledge. Especially as a pre-med and as a student in medical school, we will look at the whole syllabus that we have to learn and worry about, oh crap, I have so much more information left to understand. And that's when we start digging ourselves in a hole of stress and being overwhelmed, because there's just so much information to learn, and we tend to focus on how much is left instead of focusing on how much we've learned. If you have a lecture of, if you have a test and you're about to learn 30 lectures worth of material and you've learned 25 pretty successfully, you're still going to tend to focus on the 5 that you didn't. And that's just really requires a shift in your mindset. Instead, you have to look at yourself in a very optimistic viewpoint and saying, I may not have grasped these 5 lectures, but I sure know that these 5, or I know that these 25 lectures are going to serve me well on the test. So put yourself in a mindset of abundance versus deficiency. Understand and be appreciative and congratulatory to yourself on how much you've learned throughout the test, the course, whatever it may be. Like when you're studying for step 1 is a great example. Instead of focusing on all the information you don't know, focus on all the information you've learned and keep going from there. It's much easier to be motivated when you're in that state of mind. So abundance to deficiency is a huge thing. It's helped me a ton in medical school. So focus on that. The final thing is using resources that aren't given by your school and tend to focus on board-like questions. So I'm going to use step 1 as an example. If you're a first or second year medical student, step 1 is a huge exam and it's going to kind of hover over your head. You're always thinking about it. So what I recommend to my students is while you're studying for your classes, have a resource that you go to that is designed to focus on studying for step 1. So 2 resources I love using is USMLE RX, which is a question bank that is made by the same people that make first aid. I'll put that in the link in the description too, but it is made by the same people. That's your questions. If you can answer these practice questions, you pretty much know first aid. So you don't have to read the book. I hate reading books. I much rather prefer doing practice questions. But when you're studying for like your cardio course, do practice questions from USMLE RX to assess how well you understand the first aid section of cardio, because those are all high yield information that will show up for your board exam. If you understand the high yield information as well as your class material, you're going to do great. So insert those maybe towards those last 10 days of your review, if not sporadically throughout your course as you're studying. I'll let you kind of decide how you want to arrange your study schedule. The other resource that I love using that's not made by you is Broencephalons. So I love flashcards, and Broencephalons is amazing. So if you guys don't know about it, either you're not in medical school or you've been under a rock. But it is a fabulous resource of I want to say 16,000, but it's probably larger now, 16,000 flashcards, which is a compilation of resources, flashcards that are very one sentence flashcards from first aid, from Pathoma, which is another resource that medical students love to use for pathology, and like the pharmacology section in first aid. And it has very specific questions with the diagrams, and it's just nicely laid out for step one. So if you complement your courses with broencephalons and just do like 10 to 50 cards, 50 cards is completely doable because they're so quick. You're going to be starting to master a little bit of first aid every single day. And you're going to be able to review for your exam, know what's high yield because you know it shows up on first aid, and also be well prepared for step one. So have a resource, whatever it is, even those two resources that I mentioned, or another resource altogether that is not made by you and is just a source of practice. So that way you can assess like how well you understand the information when it's not putting in a setting of information you've created, like an outline or flashcards. So those are my 6 tips. Now, I want to kind of give you guys a direction on where to go after this video. And I first want to kind of announce the winner of this month's giveaway. Let's do kind of showing you where to go to next. I'll do that part first, and then I'll now announce this month's giveaway winner. So if you found this video helpful, like obviously give it a like, all that stuff I always say at the very end, like, share, subscribe. But if you want to kind of know where to go next, these aren't all my only tips. Like I mentioned, if you want to know kind of how an example of how to study in medical school, I'll link down below. It's always in my description. It's a free video course as well as a free guide. And I just kind of take you step by step, like hold your hand, step by step of how I studied. And you can kind of see an example. You don't have to use my technique. It doesn't work for everybody, but you can kind of see how I start thinking about my studying and what type of things that I value. And so that's in the description. And so, have fun with that. If you want something more descriptive, you want some more study techniques, there's 2 books that I've written that you guys can check out. The one that's more particular to this video is my How to Study in Medical School, which has been pretty well reviewed by people that have gotten it. Right now on the website, you get that book as well as my preclinical guide, which is kind of a step-by-step guide for students that are just starting medical school within the first 2, and you get both of them for essentially the price of one. But both of those are also down below. And then finally, if you are a pre-med and you kind of want more direction for pre-meds, particularly, a new course for pre-meds that I just kind of released called the Pre-Med Blueprint. I should be able to say my own course. And in addition to studying, we go over like MCAT, we talk about extracurriculars, we talk about getting into medical school, personal statements, everything that's relevant that I wish somebody would have told me before I went to college of what I should value. All those things are kind of mentioned in the Pre-Med Blueprint. So that will be linked down below too. And I'm still putting out content for that, which is why the course is going to be at a discounted rate to whatever you see it right now. So jump on that. But you guys, when you click on that link, you'll be able to see that video of me walking you through the memory palace if you just wanted to see an example. So kind of to end it off, as I mentioned, let's do this month's giveaway, which this month's giveaway is going to include the 2 books that I mentioned, as well as the course. And then if the person that I picked doesn't want any of those, then we can give it to another subscriber. So this month's giveaway, I'm giving it to a subscriber who is always active on my comment section. I'm really appreciative of it, just because I feel like we're building a little bit of a community, a little bit of a family, and I'm really, that's exciting to always see kind of similar faces and similar names. So Luna, you are this month's giveaway winner. So in addition to, you'll get those 3 things. I will email those to you or at least message you on YouTube. But thank you so much for being supportive like you have. And all of you guys that have been commenting, being very kind and supportive. Thank you so much. And I'm going to continue to do this because I always want to kind of give out as much information to help somebody in my shoes. And hopefully when you guys are in the shoes, you can spit out even more knowledge and kind of help them get much further and help them get to a much further starting point. So Luna, congratulations. I'm going to wrap this video up. I don't want to take too much of y'all time. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you aren't subscribed to the channel, obviously do so. There's more videos coming out like this on a weekly basis, but this 30-day challenge, so it's a daily basis. So I will see you guys in another video tomorrow. And next week, I'll be dropping, as I mentioned, the the Memory Palace video, so keep an eye out for that. So if you subscribe and you put your notification bell on, you guys will get an idea, or you guys will get updated on that. But like, share, and subscribe. Comment below with any questions you guys have in future videos. Thank you guys for those kind words in the comment section. And wish me luck on my Step 2 CS exam tomorrow. Maybe say something in the comment section. It's good luck, something, any type of comment that you guys do, guys, will help me reach more people that do not know about the MD journey. And so I'm just trying to get more eyeballs because I want to help as many people as possible while I have the free time to do so. So Step 2 CS tomorrow, a video on that is coming out once it's done. And that's going to be it for this video. Again, I'm super appreciative of all you guys that joined, all you guys that watched the replay. But I am signing off. I will see you guys tomorrow. Take care, guys.